Thessaly had walked through 6 star systems, and no one had looked at her until the human doorman bowed and asked if he could carry her bags. She paused, a slight smile playing on her lips as she stared down at Marcus Webb. "You must think I'm carrying all of Earth's treasures," Thessaly said softly, but with an edge of amusement in her voice. Marcus straightened up from his bowing position and met her eyes. His blue gaze held warmth and sincerity despite the weariness that lined his face. "Perhaps it's more like your presence is a treasure itself, one we should honor," he replied gently. Thessaly tilted her head slightly, considering him for a moment before nodding appreciatively. She handed over 2 small bags to Marcus, who accepted them with practiced ease, and began walking towards the elevators behind the front desk area of the Grand Hotel. Thessaly followed closely, feeling a strange sense of relief in his unspoken respect. The lobby was bustling as usual, interspecies businessmen, travelers from distant worlds, each hurrying along without giving her so much as a glance. A couple rushed by, their hands intertwined and faces close together in an obvious display of affection. Thessaly watched them with a hint of envy mingled with sadness, and a reminder that she was alone now. She reached the front desk and placed herself directly opposite where the clerk sat hunched over some paperwork on his terminal screen. His eyes never lifted to meet hers, not even when she cleared her throat softly. After several moments, he finally looked up at someone behind Thessaly, completely ignoring her presence. "Welcome, madame," Marcus said from beside her with a friendly smile towards the clerk. "He'll check us in quickly, and we can head straight upstairs." Thessaly's expression softened as she watched his graceful handling of what should have been an awkward situation. She appreciated how he didn't overcompensate for ignoring staff. Rather, it was handled discreetly yet firmly. The clerk grumbled something under his breath about having too many old guests and typed in Marcus's name into the system. "A room for Mr. Webb." The words were not a question, but an irritated statement. "Yes," said Marcus calmly as he showed the man their reservations on a tablet screen. Once satisfied, the clerk printed out the keycard for Thessaly's suite without any further acknowledgement of her identity or presence there at all. Marcus took it with thanks and tucked it into his uniform pocket while handing over payment to cover both accounts. Then turning back towards Thessaly, again he offered another polite bow along with extending an arm in invitation. "Shall we proceed up?" She placed a delicate hand on the crook of his elbow, as if they were an old couple attending some regal event. And she suddenly felt more like herself than ever before today. "Lead the way," Thessaly said with genuine gratitude. They walked through corridors lined with plush carpets and elegant paintings depicting Earth's diverse landscapes and cityscapes at various times throughout history. The few guests they encountered on their path glanced past them, failing to notice either of this new pair making their way upstairs for their rooms. Yet amidst the indifference around her today, Thessaly felt a growing warmth in heart, thanks solely due Marcus Webb's respect. It was rare, no a precious rarity after years fading into obscurity within many galactic societies, because she didn't fit their beauty standards anymore. His actions were simple acts of kindness, yet powerful enough to remind her there still existed people who could see beyond surface appearances. When they arrived at the door marked with number 409, Marcus paused and turned towards Thessaly once more, bowing deeply, this time from the waist down, while he held out both hands as if presenting a grand prize. "Here we are," he said warmly. "Your suite awaits your pleasure." Thessaly stepped back slightly, then moved forward slowly to accept his offer of assistance with opening her door properly. She felt his hand lightly brushing against hers, sending another small shock through her body. She entered first, but without turning around left the door open as Marcus stood there waiting respectfully behind her just inside threshold area, now looking up at ceiling light softly illuminating space before continuing further into lavish suite interior designed for utmost comfort and luxury. Thessaly turned back to him, then finally smiled openly, eyes shining unexpectedly with unshed tears. She reached out again, this time laying both hands lightly over Marcus' shoulders, as if blessing him or thanking him silently in that moment without needing words at all between them now. And from deep within her heart rose one simple thought: this man, this human who sees me clearly, even through my faded state, is worth knowing better than anyone else I've encountered along this long journey back to Earth. Marcus Webb guided Thessaly Vor'Nethis through the labyrinthine corridors of the luxury interspecies hotel, his posture impeccable and his demeanor serene despite the indifferent glances cast their way by other guests. The elderly Thessaly woman held on to Marcus' elbow as if it were a lifeline connecting her to dignity in an otherwise cold world. Upon reaching the door marked 409, Thessaly felt a moment of hesitation before stepping inside with grace that belied her age and recent mistreatment. She paused at the threshold, turning back towards Marcus, who stood respectfully behind her, his eyes reflecting nothing but warmth and kindness. Thessaly's voice was soft yet resolute as she spoke. "Why are you so kind to me?" Marcus raised a brow in surprise before responding with genuine confusion. "Kind? I'm only treating you the way any decent person would treat their guests. Why wouldn't I be kind?" His gaze softened further as he saw her slightly puzzled expression. She shook her head slowly, eyes tracing his face with an almost reverent quality, as if trying to absorb each line of care etched there. It's rare now," she admitted quietly. "In my home worlds, especially in my current state, it feels like the beauty I once possessed has faded into non-existence." Marcus nodded understandingly, but kept his composure intact. He pulled out a chair for Thessaly to sit, noting how gracefully her hands guided him through this small act of courtesy, even as she seemed taken aback by such simple gestures. "Here," he said gently, pushing the chair closer until it clicked against the floor with finality. "Please make yourself comfortable." Thessaly sat down slowly, her faded violet eyes fixed on Marcus' kind blue ones, which never once wavered from their respectful gaze. She could feel a warmth blooming within her chest, an unfamiliar sensation after years of being ignored and overlooked even by those closest to her. "Thank you," she whispered, almost too softly for him to hear over the hushed tones of passing guests outside the room's door. "It means more than you can know." Marcus placed both hands on Thessaly's shoulders, lightly but firmly enough to make his presence felt without intruding further upon her personal space. He leaned down slightly and fixed her with a steady look that spoke volumes about dignity and respect. "Madam," he said, his voice carrying an underlying note of strength tempered by kindness, "you are welcome here as any guest would be. Your beauty may have faded physically, but there's still something about you, some essence that commands attention, even when others fail to notice." Thessaly blinked slowly at this unexpected revelation before her eyes softened into grateful appreciation once more. "Even so," she said after a moment, "I must ask, why do I feel like royalty in your presence? Why are these acts of simple courtesy such an immense weight off my heart?" Marcus straightened up and moved to pour her tea from the small service tray he had brought along. His movements were deliberate, but efficient, perhaps more so than necessary for a brief respite before their evening's events. Yet every action exuded purposeful care. "Because," he replied, as he added sugar cubes to 2 teacups with delicate precision, "I believe everyone deserves respect and kindness regardless of age or appearance. You're not just another guest, you are someone who has come from afar to see family." His gaze met hers again over the steaming cups, offering them up like an exchange of goodwill. Thessaly accepted her tea gingerly, but with a renewed sense of warmth inside. She took a sip and closed her eyes briefly, as if savoring both beverages' taste and Marcus' words deeply within herself. When she opened them once more, they shone brightly despite the faint lines etched around them by years gone past. "I see," she murmured thoughtfully, "but your perspective is unique, even among humans, or so it seems." Marcus smiled faintly at this observation before setting down his own cup and stepping back towards Thessaly's side of the suite. He pulled out another chair for himself now that they were seated properly. "Let me explain further," he began as he took a seat opposite her, posture still impeccable yet relaxed in comfort rather than rigid formality. "It wasn't always this way when I was younger, back before becoming a doorman here at the hotel." Thessaly tilted her head curiously while folding her hands gracefully over the armrest of her chair. "Oh," she prompted softly, encouraging him to continue if he wished. Marcus' gaze flickered briefly towards their surroundings before returning fully to Thessaly. "In my younger days," he said quietly yet clearly enough for only them both to hear, "I worked as a butler in grand estates where etiquette and grace were paramount." He paused here thoughtfully while sipping his tea slowly. "And now?" she pressed gently when silence lingered comfortably between them, without awkwardness or need of immediate continuation. "Now," Marcus continued softly yet with conviction evident through every word spoken, "I find more value in treating everyone equally rather than only those who can give me something tangible back in return. It's not about what others think. I believe true class comes from within." Thessaly listened intently to these words, hanging heavily but beautifully between them, like fine silk threads connecting their souls momentarily through shared understanding and mutual respect. I understand," she said finally, her tone both grateful and reflective now, as if seeing herself anew through Marcus' eyes rather than societal lenses so long accustomed. Marcus offered another kind smile before leaning back into his chair slightly with arms resting lightly on armrests. The room fell silent again after that, except for occasional sounds of guests passing by outside their suite door or soft ticking clock elsewhere in building, adding gentle rhythm to otherwise tranquil atmosphere within. As minutes slipped away, gradually turning towards evening hours, Marcus rose gracefully from where he sat opposite Thessaly and approached her once more with polite deference. He extended one hand outwards gently toward hers resting on table before them, inviting but not forcing acceptance of gesture offered. "Shall we prepare ourselves for dinner now?" he inquired courteously, while looking directly into fading eyes that nonetheless held newfound sparkle, reflecting appreciation back at him openly. Thessaly allowed herself to be led by Marcus yet again as they prepared together towards another moment set apart from cold indifference pervading hotel corridors. His actions and words continued weaving golden threads through her heart, making each step feel lighter, each breath easier taken amidst surroundings previously filled only with disregardful gazes and unfeeling treatment. She felt truly seen, truly valued, and for the first time in many long years, since her beauty faded away into obscurity, Thessaly Vor'Nethis began to believe once more that perhaps there existed kindness left within universe beyond fading stars surrounding Earth's blue planet. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the high windows of Grand Lux, interspersing beams of light across the polished marble floors and gilded columns that defined its grandeur. Marcus had just finished his conversation with Thessaly in her suite when he heard a familiar voice boom from the lobby below. "Miss Vor'Nethis!" Manager Crick's baritone bellow carried up several flights, sending shivers down every guest's spine who overheard it as they moved about their business. Known for his sharp tongue and disdainful manner towards anyone beneath what he perceived to be his clientele, Crick strode into the lobby with an air of self-importance that made many cringe. Thessaly, having stepped out onto her balcony to enjoy a momentary reprieve from the hotel's indifferent atmosphere, heard him calling. As she turned back inside and descended the stairs leading down to reception, her heart sank slightly at the sound of his voice. "Manager Crick," Thessaly greeted him formally as she entered the lobby once more. Her violet eyes met his cold gaze with a calmness that belied years spent beneath others' judgmental scrutiny. Crick's sneer was unmistakable as he looked over her worn, elegant attire and translucent silver lavender skin now dulled by time and neglect. "Miss Vor'Nethis," he acknowledged in a tone dripping condescension, his gaze lingering disapprovingly on the faded remnants of Thessaly's once pristine garments. "Shall I inform your travel agent about our available accommodations more fitting for your present circumstances?" Crick's words dripped with mockery as he suggested she'd be more comfortable at a lower class establishment. He paused, adding insult to injury, "We cater here to a certain clientele." The lobby fell silent. Hushed murmurs ceased abruptly in response to the manager's blatant disregard for Thessaly. Guests exchanged uneasy glances among themselves, some shifting uncomfortably while others simply pretended not to hear. Marcus, who had been just down the corridor on an errand, returned at that moment and caught sight of Crick's condescending approach towards Thessaly as she entered the lobby from her balcony. His keen senses immediately picked up on the tension, and his heart clenched with a protective instinct for someone so clearly being disrespected despite their dignity. "Manager," Marcus greeted sternly, his posture standing tall yet relaxed. Years of butler training gave him an air that commanded respect without demanding it through forceful actions or words. "This guest has been perfectly gracious." His eyes never left Crick's as he added quietly, "Perhaps the manager would be more comfortable elsewhere." Crick's sneer deepened, his blue-gray eyes narrowing in irritation at Marcus's interference, but unable to fully mask a flicker of annoyance behind them. He glared daggers at Thessaly before turning sharply on his heel and stomping towards the elevators. Marcus turned back towards Thessaly. Ho had watched this exchange with widened violet irises, her expression now softened by an unexpected warmth despite Crick's cruelty. "Would you like to return to your suite?" Marcus offered politely yet firmly, ensuring she was treated as any guest should be regardless of others' opinions or prejudices. Thessaly nodded gently in thanks and allowed him to lead the way back up towards her room amidst guests now eyeing them both with varying degrees of curiosity, some bewildered by Crick's treatment while others quietly commended Marcus's defense of Thessaly against such obvious disrespect. Once they reached her suite, she turned gratefully toward Marcus. "Thank you," she said simply yet profoundly, her voice carrying the weight of a lifetime spent seeking acknowledgment among those who deemed beauty more valuable than grace and dignity. Marcus bowed his head slightly in response to her gratitude before straightening once more with that same composed demeanor befitting both past service roles and present one as doorman. "You're welcome," he replied softly, offering Thessaly another warm smile before turning towards the door. "Please rest now if you wish." Thessaly watched him depart gracefully from her suite, feeling a sense of genuine appreciation for Marcus's unwavering kindness amidst an environment that often seemed void of compassion or respect. She moved to sit by one of the windows overlooking Grand Luck's bustling main street, below where people flowed like rivers around towering buildings and neon-lit advertisements. As night began settling over Earth in shades of twilight, Thessaly felt a warmth inside her chest, something rare and precious after so many years spent feeling invisible beneath others' gazes. She found herself drawing strength from moments such as those shared with Marcus, where dignity was upheld, not just spoken about, genuine respect shown even when unearned. Marcus, meanwhile, made his way back down towards the lobby, moving quietly past groups of guests who now whispered amongst each other regarding Crick's earlier outburst and Marcus's dignified response. Many seemed to feel a newfound admiration for him as well, a butler turned doorman whose actions spoke louder than words ever could when it came to true class. Reaching reception once more, where he resumed his post, Marcus felt eyes on him again, today different from usual. This time they were not just guests checking in or out, but peers who recognized a quiet stand against injustice and disrespect seen too often within such grand establishments, catering only to perceived status rather than inherent worthiness of every individual soul present. His mind wandered briefly back upstairs, where Thessaly now rested, perhaps contemplating life's strange twists and turns leading up this moment. Marcus found himself wondering about her grandchildren, whom she traveled far across galaxies simply to see. How must they feel knowing their grandmother faced such disregard upon arriving? He shook his head lightly, as thoughts of what lay ahead remained for another day. Tonight he was content in having stood by one person amidst countless others choosing indifference or cruelty. Perhaps it would make a difference someday, not just within Grand Lux, but across all corners where beauty overshadowed dignity. Marcus returned to observing the lobby's comings and goings with renewed purpose, a silent sentinel guarding against prejudice under any form, while ensuring everyone, regardless of their position in life's grand scheme, was treated with unwavering respect. The chapter ends here as night falls over Grand Lux. As the morning sun rose over Grand Lux, casting a golden glow through the tall windows of Thessaly's suite, she found herself staring out at Earth in awe. Yet there was an unusual warmth within her that didn't stem from this alien world's light, but rather from the encounter with Marcus Webb last night. Marcus approached Thessaly's room later that morning to inquire about breakfast preferences and any additional services required for her stay. His entrance today was met not just by Thessaly herself, who sat gracefully at a small desk near one of the windows, but also by an array of holographic images projected in midair around her, images Marcus had seen glimpses of through gaps on his previous visit. "Good morning, Mrs. Vor'Nethis," he greeted politely as he entered, ensuring to close the door behind him with a gentle click. His demeanor radiated calm and respect. It was clear that every interaction here carried weight in his eyes, not just formalities, but genuine care for those around him. Thessaly turned at the sound of Marcus's soft voice, her gaze shifting from the holograms back to him with an expression that mixed gratitude and curiosity. "Good morning, Mr. Webb," she responded warmly, returning a slight nod towards him. She beckoned him closer by way of a gentle wave with one elegant hand. "I hope you slept well?" he asked as he moved toward her desk, his eyes flicking briefly to the intricate holographic display above it before returning to her face for an answer. "Yes, thank you," she replied softly, It's been quite some time since I felt comfortable in such surroundings. Marcus nodded understandingly. I'm glad, he said with sincerity. He couldn't help but notice how Thessaly had rearranged the room slightly from his last visit, adding more personal touches and positioning herself closer to these holograms that now surrounded her like old friends. May I ask what you're looking at over there? Marcus inquired gently, gesturing towards one of the images that seemed particularly striking. Thessaly, standing amidst a throng of admirers on some distant world under starlit skies, each suitor's eyes glowing with adoration as they bowed their heads before her. Thessaly sighed softly at his question and smiled sadly. These are memories from my youth, she explained quietly but clearly. She motioned towards the holographic images floating around them. Galaxies once lay beneath my feet. Thousands of suitors came seeking favor under 1,000 stars. A time when crowds parted just to glimpse me. She paused for a moment before continuing with an almost wistful tone. Now people barely spare me glances unless they have no choice but to like you. Marcus listened attentively as Thessaly spoke of her past. He took another step closer and looked down at the holo images more closely now, his eyes reflecting something between admiration and sorrow for what time had taken from this once glorious being. I see, Marcus murmured thoughtfully, after a moment's silence passed between them. It must be hard to adjust. Indeed it is. Thessaly sighed again lightly but managed another small smile for him, appreciative of his understanding. But even harder perhaps when you realize no one sees the person within anymore. Marcus nodded in agreement and shifted slightly on his feet before suggesting gently, would you like company while we have tea? I'd be honored to listen further. Thessaly's eyes widened with surprise at this offer, but she quickly regained her composure. A rare smile lit up her face now as warmth seemed to return unexpectedly. That would be lovely, she agreed softly. With that agreement settled between them, Marcus escorted Thessaly into a cozy corner of the suite where they could sit comfortably and discuss more about these hologramsure memories encapsulated within those vivid projections. She began to tell him stories from her past, tales of interstellar guileless attended by royalty, starry guide diplomats proposing alliances through her beauty alone, and how once every gaze she received was one of admiration or awe. As the conversation unfolded over steaming cups of earth tea and Netheri honeycomb candies, Thessaly showed Marcus more holographic images, each telling a part of her life story in brilliant detail. They depicted lush gardens under alien moons, where she walked alone amidst blooming flowers, grand palaces echoing with laughter during festival nights when suitors vied for her attention from all corners, and solemn halls filled with scholars who marveled at the knowledge she possessed. In one particular holo, Thessaly was seen standing on a balcony overlooking vast star-filled skies. She wore an elegant gown that shimmered like moonlight against deep purple fabric, her face framed by cascades of flowing white hair falling down her shoulders. Crowds below parted as if drawn towards some celestial force emanating from this figure, who stood tall and proud amidst endless space above. People gasped at my entrance, Thessaly recalled softly, her gaze drifting away momentarily into those distant memories captured in the holo image before returning to Marcus with a softer smile again. They would stop just to see me walk by. Marcus listened intently. As she spoke about these moments, he felt an immense respect growing for this woman whose life had been so different from what it was now. Yet despite knowing such tales of adoration and reverence, there still lingered within him a sense of sadness, seeing how much time could change even someone like her. You're right, Marcus said gently, after several silent moments where Thessaly seemed lost in thought over those memories. People don't see beauty the way they used to. Thessaly nodded sadly, but then looked up at Marcus with new eyes full of gratitude. She reached out slowly towards one corner image, showing herself younger yet now faded and translucent. "I was someone once," she murmured, almost to herself. Marcus studied Thessaly closely for a moment longer before responding softly. "You still are," he said firmly but gently. He placed his hand over hers, resting on the table beside them, where this hologram hovered above it, giving her an unspoken gesture of support and belief in who she remained, regardless how society viewed her now. Thessaly's eyes widened slightly at this unexpected reassurance from Marcus, then softened with profound gratitude, as if finally hearing what others had failed to acknowledge throughout much longer life years. "Thank you," Thessaly whispered again deeply into those kind blue eyes that held nothing but sincere warmth and respect towards her despite outward changes wrought by time. Marcus merely smiled warmly back at her. "You're welcome, madam," he then added quietly, looking directly into her fading violet eyes. "Beauty like yours never truly fades." Thessaly blinked slowly in response to his words. She felt a rare flicker of hope reigniting somewhere deep inside herself, where it had lain dormant for so long. For the first time in ages, someone here saw beyond physical appearance and recognized something else, the essence that still lived within this elderly Nethari woman despite everything taken away by life's passage. Their conversation continued on into early afternoon as more tea was brought up fresh along with plates of delectable pastries arranged beautifully beside their cups. Thessaly shared further stories about her travels across numerous worlds and encounters made there, each one adding another layer to the mosaic, painting a picture of who she once truly had been. Throughout all these exchanges, Marcus remained both attentive listener and genuine friend, whose presence brought an unexpected comfort along with renewed sense dignity back into Thessaly's life. Each word exchanged strengthened bonds formed between them. Each memory shared further deepened mutual respect they held for one another despite vast differences in age or origin, worlds apart. As shadows began creeping across Grand Lux, once more signaling late afternoon hours, nearing twilight, Marcus stood up carefully from his chair and thanked Thessaly for her company. Again, he bowed slightly before turning towards door, but paused briefly to look back at her. "Is there anything else I can help with?" he asked softly, genuinely concerned about ensuring she needed nothing further today, amid such emotionally heavy yet meaningful day spent together, reminiscing past glories faded away under time's relentless march forward. Thessaly smiled warmly, again this time perhaps a bit brighter than before. "No," she replied after a thoughtful moment, gently waving hand dismissively towards door now opened partially by Marcus, ready for her next request, if any should arise later this evening or night. "Rest well tonight," he said kindly, as final parting words, until their paths crossed once more tomorrow morning, when Marcus would return yet again with same respectful demeanor and quiet dignity, already becoming hallmark defining his interactions here within Thessaly's suite at Grand Lux Interspecies Hotel. With that, Marcus stepped out, closing door gently behind him, leaving room filled only with soft evening light filtering through windows above, street below where life continued buzzing vibrantly under neon glow of advertisements lining Grand Lux main artery. He made his way down stairwell back towards lobby reception area, now occupied by various guests checking in out, some exchanging curious glances at Marcus, who stood there quietly he observing all around him. Despite whispers circulating about yesterday's incident involving Crix, Marcus maintained composure and focused on task at hand, ensuring everyone entering leaving received same level respect regardless of their status or appearance here within these grand halls. Each guest encountered met with courteous nod from him, each question answered sincerely, without hint prejudice-based, solely outward appearances, actions speaking volumes louder than words ever could concerning true class upheld amidst such place, catering often just perceived worthiness, rather inherent value of every individual soul present. As night began settling over Grand Lux in Shade's twilight, Thessaly found herself drawing strength again today after long period feeling invisible beneath others' gazes around her. She moved gracefully towards window overlooking bustling street below where people flowed like rivers around towering buildings and vibrant neon signage advertising goods, services available here within Earth's cityscape. Marcus, meanwhile, resumed his post back reception area, amidst increasing awareness now shown him by fellow guests who noticed dignified stand taken yesterday against injustice, disrespect seen too often amongst grand establishments, catering primarily perceived status rather inherent dignity. Every individual regardless position life's grand scheme. His mind wandered briefly upstairs where Thessaly rested, perhaps contemplating life, strange twists leading up this moment. Marcus wondered about her grandchildren, whom she traveled far across galaxies, simply see how they felt knowing grandmother faced disregard upon arriving. Shaking head lightly, thoughts remained for another day tonight. He content having stood by one person amidst countless, choosing indifference, cruelty instead, ensuring dignity he upheld even when unearned. Marcus returned, observing lobbies comings goings with renewed purpose, island sentinel guarding against prejudice under any form while ensuring everyone treated with unwavering respect regardless their place life grand scheme. The chapter ends here as night falls over Grand Lux. The dawn of a new day broke over Earth's vibrant cityscape, casting its golden light across the sprawling Grand Lux Interspecies Hotel where Marcus Webb resumed his post at reception. The previous evening's events had left an indelible mark on him, a quiet resolve to ensure every guest was treated with dignity and respect no matter their status or appearance. As the early morning sun illuminated the bustling street outside, a group of travelers approached the entrance of Grand Lux with excited chatter and laughter filling the air. Marcus observed them closely from his vantage point by the reception desk. Among this new wave of guests were three young individuals, two boys and one girl, and an older woman who stood apart from her companions. Marcus' keen eyes immediately identified Thessaly Vor'Nethis among them, though she looked slightly more haggard than when had seen her last evening. Her once vibrant clothes now appeared a bit worn around the edges, and her silver lavender skin had taken on an even paler hue under Earth's sunlight. "Good morning," Marcus greeted with his usual impeccable courtesy as they entered the lobby. He directed them towards the registration desk without hesitation, but maintained eye contact with Thessaly briefly before moving away to assist other guests checking in. Thessaly watched him go, a small smile tugging at her lips, a rare acknowledgement of gratitude that she didn't often receive from others anymore. Her grandchildren approached and gathered around their grandmother excitedly. The eldest boy, Cale, was about 17, with short brown hair and bright green eyes inherited from his Nethari mother. "Grandmother!" Cale exclaimed as he hugged Thessaly tightly. The other two children, a girl named Leela, who looked about 14, and her brother Draner, 16, followed suit, each offering warm embraces and cheerful greetings. "We're so glad to be here," said Leela in a breathless rush of excitement that made it clear she'd been looking forward to this moment for weeks. She held Thessaly's hand tightly, as if afraid she might disappear at any moment, an understandable fear given the elderly Nethari woman's declining presence within her own culture. Thessaly's eyes, though faded, still shone with love and warmth when they met Marcus's gaze again from across the lobby. He nodded back to her subtly before turning his attention elsewhere in the bustling hotel entranceway, but kept an eye on them discreetly. The children exchanged stories about their journey while Thessaly listened attentively, her hands gently patting each of them as if trying to ground herself in this rare moment of recognition and affection from younger generations. Despite the joy emanating from the three teenagers around her, a shadow lingered over Thessaly's demeanor, reminiscence of harsher realities. "Is everything all right?" Cale asked his grandmother, noticing the faint sadness that crept into her expression when she looked away momentarily from their excited reunion. "Yes, my dear," Thessaly answered softly. "Everything is fine now." As they moved through hotel corridors, with assistance and guidance provided by various staff members, including Marcus still maintaining a vigilant distance, but attentive eye on them, children noticed how differently people treated Thessaly compared to the respectful way everyone interacted with her grandchildren. "Do you see that man?" Leela whispered, nodding towards Marcus, who had just helped another guest check in. "He's always so nice and proper." Cale followed his sister's gaze to where Marcus stood at some distance, but clearly watching over them all protectively from behind the reception desk. His face softened slightly when he noticed how Thessaly was being treated differently by other hotel staff members. "Yeah," Cale agreed, furrowing his brow in confusion and concern. "Everyone else just ignores her, even looks through her like she isn't there." Lila's eyes widened with shock as she turned back to look at their grandmother again. Draner frowned deeply, feeling a sense of injustice boiling within him. "Why does that happen?" Leela asked, turning to Thessaly, who had overheard the entire exchange. "No one ever treats grandmother well here." Thessaly sighed heavily, but did not turn bitter or angry, as she might have in her younger days. Instead, she offered a reassuring smile and patted their hands once more. "That is because others fail to see what you do," Thessaly explained gently yet firmly. "It has nothing to do with me, only that they miss the beauty of those who age beyond mere physical appearance." Cale's eyes darkened slightly with frustration, but before he could respond further, Marcus approached them quietly and efficiently. "Good morning again," Marcus greeted warmly, as always, while glancing back at Thessaly. "Here are your room keys. We have set up a suite for you on the 11th floor that overlooks the central courtyard." The children's faces lit up with genuine gratitude once more, especially Cale, who reached out eagerly to take the key from Marcus. "Thank you so much," Draner said sincerely. "We really appreciate it." He looked back at his grandmother then and frowned again. "No one ever treats her well here," he repeated softly, almost under breath this time, but clearly enough for all of them, and especially Thessaly, to hear. Marcus' blue eyes darkened slightly with sympathy when he noticed the distressed look on Draner's face. He turned fully towards him now, looking directly into young man's worried gaze before responding gently yet firmly. "That is a failure of character in others," Marcus stated, his voice carrying just enough weight that everyone around them paused to listen, especially Thessaly, who looked up sharply at these words. "It does not speak poorly about your grandmother." Cale and Leela shared looks with each other before their eyes fell back on their grandfather figure. Draner's shoulders relaxed visibly while he nodded in understanding. "Thank you," Cale said again, though this time the gratitude was tinged with a new determination. "Well, make sure everyone knows how amazing she is." Marcus smiled slightly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes, which still held an intense focus on Thessaly, who had straightened up ever so slightly under his words of affirmation and protection. "Indeed," Marcus nodded then, bowing ever so slightly before turning back towards reception area to assist another incoming guest, while keeping one eye discreetly on the group until they disappeared upstairs towards their room, finally settled in for now after a long journey. As Thessaly moved with her grandchildren up into hotel suite where she would rest and spend time catching up fully once more, Marcus found himself walking among busy lobby-filled early morning arrivals again, this time however carrying not just physical luggage, but also renewed purpose within him. His interactions became even more focused on ensuring every person felt seen and respected, no matter their standing or species. The events of this day would ripple through Grand Lux in subtle yet profound ways. Some guests noticed the change first. Others took note days later once patterns formed clearly under Marcus' unwavering commitment to equitable treatment regardless status labels worn by those around him. For Thessaly, though invisible to many eyes in her culture now and perhaps here initially on Earth, she found solace among few souls who truly saw past physical decline into hearts full of love and respect. The chapter ends as night begins settling over Grand Lux yet again, but this time carrying with its seeds planted early morning by simple act kindness displayed without expectation or recognition other than internal satisfaction, knowing dignity upheld even amidst challenges faced daily within grand establishment catering often perceived worthiness rather inherent value every soul present. As Grand Lux, Marcus Webb found himself reflecting on his interactions with Thessaly Vor'Nethis and her grandchildren. The past few days had left an indelible mark, not just on him, but on everyone around them. He was particularly mindful of the final day's preparations for their departure. Marcus decided that this last encounter needed to be something special, a farewell fitting the grace with which Thessaly carried herself despite everything she had endured in her long life. Quietly and efficiently, he began making arrangements behind the scenes. The hotel staff listened intently as Marcus shared stories of his own past stories about the values instilled by his late wife that resonated deeply within them. Late into the evening before their departure, Thessaly was seated in one of Grand Lux's grand lounges with her grandchildren gathered around. She told tales from her youth, when she had been a figure of unparalleled beauty and prestige across several star systems. Kale listened intently while Leela sketched the details on a pad, capturing expressions that only an artist could convey. "Remember this moment," Marcus said to Draenor quietly as he passed by with his morning coffee round. "You're making history here." Draenor nodded solemnly and glanced at Thessaly's face. It was etched with lines of both pride and sadness. Pride in her family, sadness for the world that had ignored such a magnificent being. The next day arrived brisk but clear. Marcus ensured everything was in place, polished floors reflecting soft light, every staff member alert yet unobtrusive. When Thessaly made her way down to the lobby early morning, with Draenor and Kale leading the procession, while Leela brought up the rear, Marcus' heart swelled. Thessaly stepped into the lobby that was now eerily silent, except for soft footfalls. She paused, seemingly unaware of what lay ahead, her faded eyes scanning the area as if searching for something lost long ago, yet lingering within these walls. As she drew closer to where Marcus stood near reception, a slight bow and a warm smile his greeting could feel an unusual energy in the air, but couldn't quite place it. It was only when she approached that reality hit her like thunderbolts across crystal skies. The entire hotel staff had lined up along both sides of the lobby, standing to attention with hands clasped neatly behind their backs. Thessaly's violet eyes widened, as if trying to absorb every detail. That concierge face turned respectfully toward her, each uniform impeccable despite the momentary stillness that spoke volumes about respect and care. A murmur began among them, collective breath held in reverence of someone who usually was unnoticed, invisible even by their own standards. "Good morning, Mrs. Vor'Nethis," Marcus said softly but firmly from his place at the front. His eyes met hers with an understanding that transcended words. There were stories here, lessons learned through years spent watching people treat one another based on status or appearance, rather than intrinsic worthiness. "You have been a distinguished guest of Grand Lux." His voice carried over quietly, reaching every corner where ears strained to catch his spoken tribute, but also in Thessaly's heart deeply. A tear slipped down her pale cheek unbidden as she realized the magnitude before her. No grand speeches or pompous gestures, but something far more meaningful. Every person present had chosen this momentary pause for a single woman who, by all visible measures today, and especially back home on Netherian, would likely face being walked past like air. But here in Earth's Grand Lux, she was recognized as someone exceptional. "You didn't have to," Thessaly whispered softly, her voice trembling with emotion, not just from this gesture, but the weight of years when such acknowledgment felt impossible even for brief moments. Marcus bowed deeply before rising once more. "It was my honor," he replied simply. His tone left no room for doubt about sincerity or pride in what they all had chosen to do. Today, a final act of dignity and respect that spoke louder than any grandiose declaration ever could. The day Thessaly left Earth, the hotel buzzed differently. There was a sense of closure mixed with anticipation. Marcus continued his routine duties, but now carried an extra warmth. In every interaction he had set something in motion beyond just honoring one elderly, alien woman. Months and then years passed since that memorable morning departure from Grand Lux into another chapter for Thessaly's long life journey. Each year thereafter, she returned, always greeted warmly by Marcus, who would personally welcome her back with a smile reserved only for those few souls he truly respects deeply. One particularly crisp autumn evening, several visits later, as they stood in the now familiar lobby setting just before twilight turned into nightfall, soft shadows falling gently over Grand Lux's grand marble floors once more, Thessaly found herself compelled to ask him directly. "Marcus," she began softly but clearly enough for only them both to hear, amidst the hum of evening preparations around them, "why did you treat me so well from day one?" He smiled warmly at her as he often does, but there was an added depth in those kind blue eyes, reflecting back all that they had shared over these repeated yearly visits. "Your story touched me," Marcus replied sincerely, his tone gentle yet carrying conviction. "My mother taught me something very important. The true measure of one's character lies not just in how we treat our equals or superiors, but especially so for those who cannot do anything tangible for us in return." Thessaly's hand reached out to gently touch Marcus's own, a gesture both acknowledging and paying respect to his wisdom. "Your mother raised a king among men," she said quietly, her voice full of admiration. Marcus bowed slightly from the waist, an elegant movement that conveyed more than words ever could about how much he valued this quiet connection with someone who had taught him so much, despite her, rather precisely because of what others might see but never truly notice. "She raised a doorman," Marcus replied humbly, but one who knows true royalty when it is seen. Their conversation concluded here, within the soft glow of setting sunlight through large windows, illuminating Grand Lux's grand halls, both knowing implicitly that though their roles may seem small or unremarkable to many others, what they shared mattered immensely.